Randy's is personal. You know, it's intimate interactions with customers, really fun and ever-changing wine program. And, you know, we're opening bottles left, right and centre for customers and doing the hand sell things. Very, very cool. And just chatting to people.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. There's been a few instances on Deep in the Weeds where we've discussed the wave of hospitality venues blurring the lines between restaurant and wine bar. They've become a real feature of the culinary landscape, but there are some that were the driving force behind that shift and helped set the precedent for others to follow. Andy Emerson is the co-owner of Bar Elvina and newly opened Randy's Wine Bar. Andy, how are you?
I'm great, mate. Thanks so much for having me on.
It's good to get you on the show. You've really carved a career of blurring that line between restaurants and bars with many venues. What was the driving force there to head in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, I guess initially we opened the Passage Bar in Darlinghurst many moons ago, which was basically a nightclub serving decent food and booze. And we were passionate about live music and entertainment and trading late and cocktails, but we're also, you know, super passionate about food with my partner then, Ed Loveday. And we were constantly, you know, partying, having a good time, running this nightclub and then dining on our days off at great restaurants around Sydney.
These days, you find yourself not in northern Sydney, but you know most of your venues were in the CBD. Why are you up in sort of the region of Avalon these days?
Yeah, mate. I always ran and had restaurants and bars around Darlinghurst, you know, Potts Point and whatnot, and then more recently in the city. But yeah, my wife's actually from Avalon, and we would come up here on weekends with the kids and, you know, stay for a week or stay for a couple of weeks, and it just became a super attractive lifestyle. The rat race in the city was pretty mental. I've got 2 young kids, so yeah, we made the shift up here about 4 years ago, and I was still running a venue in the city, and that was becoming pretty tiring. So I left that business, and I was on the hunt for just a small little, you know, space where I could open a new venue, kind of a wine bar. But we ended up with Bar Elvina. It was about 120 seats, and we're 2 years into that.
You opened that in 2020, which was a pretty challenging year for everyone. And did you have to approach it differently being out of the CBD, given that it was, just such a different offering?
Yeah, I mean, we opened in November 2 years ago. Actually, crazy enough, to the same day we opened Randy's Wine Bar. I was freaking out in the afternoon, getting ready to open, and I looked down at my phone. I could see a photo memory saying, "This day 2 years ago, you opened Bar Elvina," which was a trip out, but it was pretty nice actually. But Elvina, mate, we actually opened 4 weeks before the Avalon cluster popped up. If you remember, the Avalon crew were trapped up here in our own little, postcode for a good, I think it was 8 weeks. So that was a fun wild ride. We had 4 amazing weeks of trade. And then as a brand new business, we were shut for 8 weeks. So we just bunkered down and did what we could.
Did you have to treat, bar COVID aside, do you have to treat the offering and what you're doing differently compared to those CBD venues that you had?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of treated it in a very similar way in terms of service and style of food and beverage. We were a little concerned. We thought the Avalon community might be a little bit more conservative, but they lapped it up. I mean, they lapped up the level of service and the quality of food and drinks, which, you know, from the get-go we were pumping. In that period, in the last 2 years, there's been that huge influx of kind of city folk moving to the beaches and hunting for great venues like they're used to, having lived in the city or around kind of busy suburbs. So, mate, yeah, we didn't bend any rules or change anything. We just kind of did what we love, and yeah, people lapped it up. They just flocked to Elvina, which was a really fun period.
Take us back to when you were young. Where did you grow up, and what sort of role did food play in your family?
So I grew up in Sydney's inner west, and I studied at Sydney Uni, studying marine science, which was really fun, and I always loved sciences all the way through school. But on the weekends, I was pulling beers at different pubs and whatnot in the city. A couple of shifts a week, and those couple of shifts a week end up being 3 shifts a week to full time. And when I finished my degree, the company I was working for offered me full time work, and I just didn't look back. I was kind of sucked straight into the hospitality vortex, and just loved it. I loved everything about it, and I never picked up my university degree at all.
Well, I want to go back to that degree, because these days with Bar Elvina and Randy's, which we'll come to, seafood features predominantly. Well, tell us about that, sort of your fascination with marine science.
Mate, I have from a young age been studying fish, passionate fisherman. I'm sitting on a boat right now, bobbing around in Pittwater. I went fishing this morning with a buddy of mine. Everything about it I love. So it was kind of fortuitous to marry the two in terms of, running a venue, selling great seafood. My business partner, Jesse McTavish, is very passionate seafood chef, and we actually met. We got introduced by mutual friends, and we were both doing some consulting. And within a week of meeting each other, we were on a road trip down to Victoria, through the lakes and down the coast, eating oysters, fishing all the way to we ended up arriving in Melbourne on a journey of just catching up and getting to know each other. And ever since that kind of trip, the concept of food for Bar Elvina was always based around seafood, finding the best, eating the best, and his treatment of all of his raw fish, and the care and passion of out of all the dishes he produces is pretty special. And we still jam every week on that. We still get excited about the fish deliveries that roll in. We always taste an oyster before it comes off the truck, basically making sure the product is good. And to that day, it just kind of has remained. And that's kind of the focal point and the backbone of both the businesses.
You mentioned early on how you steered away from your degree and got full-time work in bars. You ended up at quite a young age being general manager of one of Sydney's most iconic hotels. Tell us about that period.
Yeah, I mean, I was bartending. I was bartending at Cargo Bar, one of Sydney's, institutions in the early 2000s for Keystone Group, and having a good time. Ended up managing the place, and I got a bit bored. I was living in Paddington at the time, and I hit the general manager up and said, I'm kind of looking for a change. And they said to me, there's a role in Paddington at the Unicorn Hotel coming up in a couple of months. Would you be interested? And I said, yep, sign me up. It took me up there, and they said, it's actually the licensee and general manager role. And I think I was freshly 24 years old. And I just, jumped at it. And I lived literally a block away from the pub, and, we ran the pub for 4 years, and some really cool, fun things, particularly at that age. And I just learned a lot. It's a super busy venue at that stage.
Do you have any stories that you can share from that time, from that venue?
Oh, there was just a lot going on. It was a classic pub, so we had comedy on Monday nights and trivia and all those sorts of things, and then DJs, and it was a late license, I think, 3 a.m. At the pub. So it used to turn into a bit of a nightclub. So it was kind of a morphing business, selling, pizzas during the day, and then it was basically a nightclub at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday morning. It was pretty rough and ready, I remember. It was pretty, it was Paddington at that stage after the big sporting events and whatnot would just turn into an absolute bloodbath. So I was constantly at St. Vincent's Hospital, I was, dealing with security and a lot of troublemakers. But there was lots of fun things. The comedy was kind of cool. You'd get people like Arj Barker and a few other people, they'd just roll in last minute and come up to me and say, mate, mind if I jump up for a set? And I'm like, yeah, mate, stage is yours, dude. So that was kind of fun. That was cool.
You mentioned The Passage, which is the first business you opened with Ed Loveday. How did that come about?
Yeah, well, Ed was working with myself at the Unicorn. I think he was one of the managers. It was just basically himself, and and I was just running it with him, and we were working together side by side for a good couple of years, and we kind of realised that we'd formed a pretty good friendship, and we started to talk about doing something ourselves. And only naturally, we started looking for sites. We started putting together a really basic concept. Like we kind of pretty much had no idea what we were doing, but we knew that we wanted to create something with great music and food and to work together. So we signed a lease for the old Lotel hotel site on Victoria Street in Darlinghurst, which was a bit of a notorious property in itself. I think it ran in the late 90s as a pretty, colourful hotel / nightclub by a few funny, a few identities. But at that stage, it had closed down, so we ended up leasing it and launched it pretty quickly. And straight away, it was good fun. And I know there's a lot of people, particularly in Sydney, who've spent many hours at the Passage Bar having a good time. So that was fun.
You had joined forces with 3 other people to create Acme back in 2015, which kind of triggered that sort of start in that sort of wine bar meets restaurant sort of feel that you created with many venues. How did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, well, Cam Fairbairn was working with us at the Unicorn, and he came across to the Passage as well. And I was living with Cam at the time too. So we were great mates, and Ed and I would always, on our days off, as I said, kind of head out, restaurants, lunches. We were passionate about food, and we knew that our food was okay at the Passage, but it wasn't amazing. So we kind of hitched a plan to create a smaller, more intimate space, really based around good food. And he was good mates with Mitch Orr, and we ended up all catching up, and just talking and chatting about trying to pull something together. And we all agreed to join forces, and all of a sudden we're super pumped and starting to look at sites. We looked, and 6 months later we negotiated on 3 or 4 properties, and we just couldn't settle on the right place until we found the site on Bayswater Road. But that had no liquor license. So we signed the lease based on not having a liquor license, and then waited, I think it was a good 6 months before we could open. Yeah, so in the meantime, we were all doing our own little things, and we had the Passage, and I can't remember the date we actually launched, but yeah, Acme was a wild ride, that's for sure.
What was special about Acme for you?
It was just, it was a 69-seat space, and we tried to keep it as quiet as possible before we opened the doors, but people were sniffing around. And no promo. We just swung those doors open, and by that stage, we had a good group of mates all around us, every one of us. So we just kind of launched straight into doing 150 covers a night, 5 nights a week for it was crazy. So it was good fun.
You mentioned Mitch Orr, and he's done many things since that time. What was he like to work with?
Mate, he's a super talented guy. Very creative, and every bit of food that came out of the kitchen was pretty phenomenal, and the quality of product was really special. And we always got on really well until probably I ended up leaving about 2 years into the business, and the guys bought me out, and I ended up moving on. At that stage, I'd just got married. My wife was pregnant, and all my partners there were all single and pumping it out. So I just made the call. It was massive weeks and massive hours, and it was just my time to go.
You made the decision to sort of flip the Passage and work with Annalise Gregory with Barb Rose. Do you have any stories of what that was like, turning that venue into that sort of restaurant bar?
Yeah, I mean, the sad thing about the Passage was a great business, but lockout laws were just destroyed us completely. We were operating for 6 years in a really healthy business, but within that decision the decision to introduce the lockout laws was really swift and just caught us by surprise. And within 4 months, we were flailing. I think the Cross, there were some statistics about it. The Cross went from having 25,000 people a night through the Cross to 5,000 people a night through the Cross. So every man and his dog were fighting for those 5,000 people, and our revenue just dropped. So we had no alternative. We had to close, and we had to hitch the plan. Annalise Gregory was working at Acme at the time, and Acme was pumping, and we all agreed that converting the nightclub space, 120 seat nightclub space into a late night wine bar serving great food would be a good idea. But sadly, I mean, it was a great business, but it just had the same problems: high rent and just lack of foot traffic, unfortunately, which was the death of Bar Rosé. But in that time, it was fucking awesome, good fun, but we just couldn't make it work. The numbers just didn't stack up.
You moved to the other side of town with a multi-level venue, Prince of York, a few years later. Tell us a little bit about that venue. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, after I kind of finished up with Acme and Bar Rosé, I went into consulting for a couple of years, creating concepts for the hotel industry, food and beverage concepts, which was really fun, 9 to 5, and good money and nice and settled. But I got a bit bored of that and really missed the opportunity to run a venue. And then I got a call from a good friend of mine, Paul Schultz, who had signed a lease on York Street and looking for some help to open this big venue. But it was huge. It was, I think it was 350 seats, 3 levels. And I kind of, it was daunting, but I felt like I was up to the challenge. So I ended up pulling together a really great team. Ed Loveday came on board, Reece Griffiths and a few others, and we launched in November. It was sadly about 4 months before the initial onslaught of COVID. But mate, we had a lot of. I mean, we those 4 months were out of control, and almost seems like a series of bad luck. But yeah, that. A 350 seat venue in the CBD, all underground during a COVID lockdown, was really a bad recipe.
Tell us a little bit about the day-to-day runnings of your role in venues. You've always sort of searched for great chefing talent in that side of things and looked after the business as such. But what's your day-to-day?
Yeah, I mean, I really deal with all front of house bits and pieces. So mainly dealing with staff, to be honest. HR's the biggest role in any of the businesses that I've ever had. Hiring, rostering. I get a massive kick out of a restaurant or bar service running in complete harmony. When everything is lined up perfectly, everyone's performing, the business is busy, and everyone's just having a great time. So that's kind of my role. I run that front of house element of the business, from staffing to music to lighting to sound to volumes to temperature. All that sort of stuff is kind of where I get my rocks off, constantly playing with lighting and dimmers and sound and just trying to create the ultimate environment for people to have fun. And people laugh at me about that because I'm constantly just adjusting little things, but it's so important, and I really get off on it.
What is the art of great hospitality, and what makes that great environment that you're constantly trying to create?
I think it's just understanding about what people want, getting in the heads of customers. These people are dressed up. It's a Friday night. They're walking in the front door. I feel like I've got a good grasp of, their desires in terms of food and drink and sound and music and making people comfortable, and just judging people as they come through the door about what tables they would like to be seated at and where they'd like to be seated and how they like to be served, and adjusting my service style to each individual.
At the top of the show, you briefly mentioned that Randy's Wine Bar opened 2 years to the day after Bar Elvina. How did Randy's come about?
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. I mean, we kind of lost track of time and whatnot. But yeah, as I said to you before, I looked down at my phone at one stage and there was a photo memory of me opening Bar Elvina, and it just turns out it was exactly the same day we opened Randy's Wine, which is crazy and fun. But yeah, so Randy's Wine, we actually opened a sandwich bar called Sandy's in Avalon about 12 months ago, with the concept of doing sandwiches by day and then a wine bar at night, which was in our heads the fun concept. We'd actually taken over we'd actually taken over a shop below Bar Elvina during lockdown, and flogged our wares down there, takeaway food and whatnot. And in the end, we just asked the landlord if we could keep the space and convert it into this sandwich shop, which we did, and we had a good time. But it took us 11 months for our liquor license to be approved in that space. And in that time, the sandwich concept just wasn't working financially, so we shelved that, and then quickly turned around this wine bar space. And then our liquor license was approved about 3 weeks ago, and within 4 days we were open.
Tell us a bit about the offering that you have there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful space. When we did the sandwich shop fit out, we used stunning kind of materials, beautiful pink marble, and just the pretty nice Swiss style sandwich shop, really. So the bones were there, and we ended up with a liquor license with 13 seats inside and 13 seats outside. And the fridges, the cabinets, the sandwich cabinets are actually like the perfect oyster and sashimi cabinets. So they're all glass with different levels, so we can basically sit all of our cold larder in one of the sandwich fridges. And then our bar is actually one of the other fridges, just an open top Bain Marie, holding all of our prep and all of our chilled wines. So the turnaround was easy and swift, and again, being like extremely lucky. I mean, just really grateful. Like the locals have been piling in since day one. So I think we're on to week 4 this week. So yeah, it's been a good journey and a good ride, and nice to make some money after being closed for a few months. So.
Many people have had a turbulent time in the last couple of years, but particularly the venues you've been involved in, one closing and then opening during COVID, and being sort of out of the CBD now. Do you approach your restaurants and your craft a little bit differently after this sort of last couple of years?
I think, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've definitely learnt a lot, and have definitely made mistakes as well, and just trying to learn from those mistakes. My wife is usually a pretty good indicator because she deals with all the shit that I end up having to deal with as well. So we basically work together on it, and I just very smart decisions, and try and minimise risk as much as possible, really. I guess that's the way to do it, and just trying not to put too much at risk for the business.
You mentioned the bond that you formed with Jesse McTavish a few years ago over the love of seafood. What's he like to work with?
Mate, I know you know Jesse well. He's like a larger than life character, and like an absolute larrikin, and always lots of fun. We share a passion for fishing, seafood, and definitely a good few bottles of wine as well. So there's never really a dull moment at any point in time, morning, noon or night. Yeah, mate, he's just his passion and his stoke for seafood's really big part of it. And yeah, we bond a lot over that, really. But just fun, understanding, very compassionate fellow, and we've both got young kids. He's got a young boy, and I've got two young children as well. So just getting to know each other and understanding each other's wants and needs is really important, and we're ultra respectful of each other. So we do share the load in a big way for both businesses.
This move that you made to the northern beaches of Sydney, what sort of impact has it had on you and everything that you do?
Mate, it's been incredible. I mean, I grew up in the inner west of Sydney, more west than inner, and I dreamed of going to the beach every day, and it was always a big family trip, loading in the car and heading down to one of the southern Sydney beaches or up to the northern beaches. So after spending so much time up here with some of Lauren's families living up here, we just ended up having just had my daughter Frida living. I think we were living in Paddington at the time, and the rat race was rough and ready and fast, and I was working too long and too many hours, and I don't know what we're trying to do. We were trying to buy a house. We're trying to do things, and it was just so hard. And then we ended up just pulling the pin completely and just shifting up to Avalon out of the blue, and that was our permanent move. And it was amazing. Every day still feels like a beach holiday up here for me, to be honest.
I know Bar Elvina has become a real hub of the community. And how's Randy's going? And what are your plans for the next sort of couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, Randy's is just an amazing creative outlet for myself, Jesse, and Nick Musgrave, who's one of the other partners in the business. I mean, Elvina is a bit of a beast of a business. It's 120 seats, a lot of events and functions and big things like that. So, and a big team. But Randy's is personal. It's intimate interactions with customers, really fun and ever-changing wine program. And, we're opening bottles left, right and centre for customers and doing the hand sell things. Very, very cool. And just chatting to people, 26 people. Like you can sit down with people. You can, really let them enjoy what we're offering, and the food's banging. Like it's such, Jesse's put a lot of work into the way dishes are presented, a lot of work into the prep behind each and every dish and every ingredient that's in the dish. It may be simple on a plate, but it is an intricate little dishes, and people are just loving it. Loud music is one thing I learned about when we ran Acme was the fact that we used to crank crazy loud, brutal, almost hip hop. It was like deafening, and I just remember that we didn't change that for the entire time that I was there. And it was a really good model, actually, because the tempo would just keep everyone kind of in a trance almost. So we've done the same here, and just playing like loud drum and bass or loud it just I don't know. It's like the customers are all in a trance and having a good time, having a great time. But yeah, so that's just fun. Music, the intimacy of service, the great booze, and just fun plates of food.
Well, you're doing some amazing things up there, and it's an honour to have you on Deep in the Weeds today to hear your story. Good luck with Randy's and Bar Elvina. Please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thanks, Huck. Mate, I appreciate it.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.